Welcome to the Alive and Kicking podcast. I'm your host, Kay Eck, and this is where we talk to ordinary people about their extraordinary lives. Welcome back to the Alive and Kicking podcast, everybody. I have as our guest today, Kirsten Barfoot. Hi, Kirsten.
Hi, Kay. How are you? Thank you for having me today.
I'm so happy that you're here. So you're joining us obviously from Australia, and you're dressed appropriately for the weather, which is the complete opposite of what I'm dressed for, which is the weather. I'm really jealous, but I'm so happy to have you here.
Yeah, thank you. I feel very blessed and honored that you have invited me to take part in this.
Oh, thank you for waking up early too, for getting with us. So it's always so hard to connect the right times. All of my Australian friends, they all want to meet, in their morning, which is my night. So I do it, but it's like, it's obviously not my best time. So it's not quite evening here. So this is perfect for me. So yeah, let's just jump right in. I want to talk a little bit I want to find out from you what your childhood was like and what your sense of yourself was as a child.
Oh, getting right into it.
Yeah.
Look, I think I had a pretty happy childhood. I was born in South Africa. My parents are New Zealanders, and so they traveled. That's actually quite a bit. They were quite a big inspiration for me in terms of traveling and seeing the world and experiencing life from that perspective. And we moved to New Zealand when I was about 10. And that time of my life was actually pretty tough. I think I've tried to make amends with it now, but it was a time in my life where I really felt like an outsider. Like, you talk about racism being you need to be a different color or a different culture or whatever, but that was, I spoke differently, and there were just this kind of taunting that kids do, So I was very happy when my parents announced that they were going to move to Australia. And I was like, yes, like a fresh start, new start. And so we came to Australia, and I'm so like, even now I've traveled, I've done quite a lot of traveling. I'm so grateful that we live in this beautiful part of the world, and that we have been given this opportunity to develop here. But I guess my sense of self, like, when I remember that I always knew I was here for something. I remember, like, even as a small child, that I was here to do something, and I could never connect with it. And it used to frustrate me because I'd watch my sister. She was so clear. I mean, she's changed what she was doing, but she knew, like, she was just so clear about stuff. And I had friends at school who were certain about what they wanted to do. And I was just like, yeah, I just couldn't find this tangibility on something. And I feel like I would go towards things and I would be discouraged in one way or another. Either it was discouragement from, parents kind of going, oh, maybe that's not quite the right thing to do. Or maybe it was just that things got closed off, like it actually just became impossible. So I sort of carried around a little bit. I know these beliefs now, but I didn't back then, is that I can't be who I want, and I can't do what I want. And so the journey has really been about, like, connecting to that inner self, to bring that information to light now.
I'm always so amazed at the depth of children's understanding of themselves, or their surroundings. And it just, because I ask this question often in the podcast, and some of the answers, they're just so, they're so rich and so meaningful, and also so kind of heartbreaking too, a lot of the time. So take us back to your really young years in South Africa. And can you tell us how that influenced who you are, who you became?
I think growing up in such a diverse country really makes me, I think if I was to look back now, I would say it's built that compassion, but I don't think I would have used that then as a small child. And certainly I took a lot for granted. That country is filled richly with diversity, with culture, with exquisite countryside. It's just, it's got that that African style to it. Like they do say, you can take the man out of Africa, but you can never take Africa out of the man. And in my case, the woman. And it's so true. Like every time I go back there, I land on the soil and there's this feeling I've come home, because there's something very powerful about the energy there. And it's not something that, people would naturally go, oh, wow, yeah, that's what you would see in the picture, in news or whatever, because it's certainly not that portrayal. And certainly as an under 10-year-old, that kind of understanding of politics or anything like that was just not in my field of awareness. So I had a very naive kind of impression of the country. And to be honest, it was when I came to Australia and I was watching Cry Freedom, and I saw this atrocity that had gone on, and I was crazed. I was like in this rage of like, how could that happen? And how can anyone say that that is okay? Like this was the genocide that just went in. And I for a while there, I had this anger inside of me thinking, how can people behave like that? So I guess when I was older, it's more like trying to find that inspiration of powerful leadership. And I think that Mandela did do a fairly good job at that. I'm sort of getting away from your question as a child. I think in terms of living there, I had a very happy childhood.
Yeah. And what were your parents doing that took them to South Africa?
Well, they just wanted to travel.
Oh.
So that was their thing. I think they hit around the age of 21. They were swimmers. So they were from New Zealand, and they actually knew each other. Dad was from the North Island and Mum was from the South Island. And through the swimming, they would, what do they call it? They would house stay. So the families actually did know each other. And when they arrived in London, they connected, as in they bumped into each other, and they didn't come together, but they all lived as a group together. And then Dad did a lot of traveling down through Africa, and then I think Mum came. I don't think there was any kind of specific work that took them there. Dad ended up doing valuation for a building society, and Mum ended up doing accounting for a big bank.
Wow, that's amazing. So
yeah.
when you landed in New Zealand, how you were 10, and so it would have been 4th grade or something like that?
Yeah. It was just, I had 1 year at primary school, and then they have a 2-year of intermediate, and then you go to high school. So the first part of the education was fine. I think it was in a very nurturing environment, and you have that typical challenge stuff, but I would call that more the normal stuff. Whereas when I went into the intermediate school, I mean, I loved it because it had so many different kinds of subjects. Like I could do metalwork and woodwork and all these creative things. And I just totally loved that, you know, art and all these experiential kinds of subjects. But I could never, I connected very badly with other kids. I didn't really have a friend network, and also the teacher just was like, Kirsten's like the worst student I've ever had, and it was just couldn't get my name right, you know. It was just and I was just like, oh, and I'd just come home and I'd cry, and then you start wanting to take days off school, and mum's like, what's going on? And anyway,
yeah,
what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah, I guess so. After it torments you for many years. So I'm wondering about that feeling that you had of that you can't be yourself and that you can't do what you want to do, and how how did that get buried within you? How did you plaster over that so that you could, carry on?
Well, I think these things are so subconscious. Like these things have only come to light within the last couple of years, you know. So for me, that plays out. And you see, this is the funny thing about your evidence procedure. Like I had this just this belief inside myself that I'm not good enough. And so your evidence procedure will show up in that capacity. Yes, see? Because when I first did that test, what is your underlying belief? It said, I'm not good enough. And you were supposed to be able to turn that around. And I was like, yeah, but you don't get it. That's true, because that's what my evidence procedure was.
So what is an evidence procedure? That's not a term that I'm familiar with.
Okay, so like for instance, I'll just go back. I partnerships is like one of my patterns. Seems that I just want to repeat the same thing. So anyway, now I'm aware of that. But you know, there's this cycle, you know, getting into relationships, it's going well, but then something happens and it dissolves. And I think, oh, okay, so that is the evidence procedure that says, oh, I'm not good enough.
Okay.
So it's
about yourself, your life will confirm that.
Yes, it's the things that will show up because that's what you're focused on. You know, so I also was made redundant from 2 jobs in a row. One was from a financial perspective because the whole company went, but the other one was because well, what I've realized now is I didn't step into my role in its full capacity. But then again, that was also that evidence that was like, yeah, see, you're not good enough. Yeah. You're not good enough.
It's almost like no matter what happened to you, the lens is I'm not good enough. So you'll interpret the situation as being a result of that.
Correct.
Wow.
And so that's why the lens, when we talk about shifting perspective, it needs to shift so that you can create a different perspective of what that actually meant. You know, so we can shift that to go, okay, well, hang on, maybe that wasn't in complete alignment with where you were heading. You know, maybe you could have actually created this situation because at some point this was not in complete alignment with where you wanted to go. And this is where it gets into that tricky space, because I do believe in the divine. I do believe in grace. So I do believe that we are here for a mission and a purpose. And if we get off track, we will be sort of, and actually this making redundant tripped a number of things that went off, and I ended up losing everything.
Oh my gosh.
I lost everything. I lost money. I lost a partner. I lost my hat. No, I didn't lose a house, but I just lost my whole identity. I was just like, can I share a story? Because this was a big turning point in my life. So I was yelling up to God and just going completely nuts. Like, what? I've got nothing. I've got no job, no money, no partner, and time's are ticking, and I had no children, and that was like the biggest thing for me. And I was like, I have nothing. And there was just something that came back, and it was this voice, and it was just like, Kirsten, you have everything. And I was like, calm. But I was like, what the heck was that? But I was calm. I was at peace. I was like, okay. So what I have come to realize is that was my first conscious mystical experience. That was something just coming down when everything feels like it's against you. There is grace. And so what I feel now is that message wasn't just for me. That message is for everybody. We are all everything. We all have everything. And so that has become my mission. That's my purpose, is to share that with people and let them know that when it feels like everything is against you, there is grace, and you do have everything within you.
Wow, that's so powerful. I want to get more into your work, but first I want to ask you about that. I'm calling it a lens, and you're calling it a, what was it called? What did you call it?
Evidence procedure.
Procedure. So this idea that you had that you weren't enough,
Mm-hmm.
how did you discover that? And is there a way for people to bring that forward if they're ready to do that work, or do they have to wait until it hits them on the side of the head?
It's a good question, a very good question. I think both. I think you have to be in some place of awareness to hear it for yourself. Because until you get to that place where you are somewhat tuned in, those things, I mean, my mum says to me all the time, she said, I was always telling you needed to believe in yourself. I was always telling. So my mum was always, she could see that I didn't believe in myself, but I wasn't hearing that, because for me, like, people saying, oh, you just need to believe in yourself is the worst thing, because it's totally unhelpful. How do you just believe in yourself when you don't? Like, you can't just get to that. I know how now, but of course that's taken me a long time to do that. But I think you can do certain things for yourself that will then elicit that kind of, you can then start communicating. But getting back to your question, is for me, the first time it came out was when I was in a room with one of my mentors, my first mentor after the event, and another colleague, and they were asking me something. I can't remember what it was about, but the words that came out of my mouth were, because I'm not good enough. And they both just were like, how could you say that? Like, they recoiled from those words. And that was the first time I was like, wow, like, that's what I think. And it's just terrible to just keep, but you know, that's what this journey is about. Is like, for me, this is sort of getting a little bit on the fun side, but it's kind of relevant because I actually think this is one of my life lessons. So it's with me. It's I can't now hide it and say, oh no, you're not there. I just have to say, okay, this is something that you have within you. So let's see when those things do come up. Okay. Anyway, the fun thing that I wanted to share was that I did a numerology report once, and it says you've got 4 stages of life, and each stage of life you have a life lesson. And so the first one said, you are your own worst critic. You know, it's so you need to, the challenge that you need to overcome is the fact that you will need to start believing in yourself. The second phase in your life is the same as number 1. Great. The third phase in your life, same as number 1. Fourth phase, same as number 1. Oh, and like, okay, maybe I just need to embrace this beauty.
Yeah, there's so many different ways that this information can come at you. If you're listening, it won't take a long time. I remember when I was in high school, I had this really good friend, and we were like, very close. And she was like my first soul sister. And I was very deep and serious. And so high school was like not the best place for me. I would stand, or even beyond that, I would like stand in the corner at a party and just like hope that nobody came to talk to me or, just like try to be invisible, because I just couldn't tolerate, I just couldn't do what everybody else seemed to be doing so naturally. And my girlfriend said to me, I'm so tired of explaining you to people. And I was like, oh my God, that is terrible. That like, first of all, people are like, what's with that chick, And I realized that I couldn't stay in a box and not be out there in the world, that people were wanting to engage with me, but I wasn't allowing that, and of course, there's so many of those moments in our lives. And if we listen to them, then we don't have to be told again. So I love the also probably one of my big partnership was the first time that I really understood projection, because he would let me know when something that I was saying was actually about me. And of course, I argued that point vehemently, but eventually I was like, is that right? And of course it was. It always is.
Yeah.
So are you now involved in coaching people on these types of life lessons?
Yeah, I think, yes. What I've come to realize is that, typically I could be wrong in my interpretation. Oh, sorry, this is my interpretation. So people might not agree with this, and that's okay. This is just how I interpret the direction in which I now feel is the way that I would like to go. Because what I've found in coaching is that people want to delve deeply into the wounds and uncover them and go into that sort of a process. For me, I've always sort of seen it like, if we can work towards the vision, if we can work towards how we want to be in the world, we are coming from a place of I was going to say grace, but everything has grace, but when we are there, we are in a much elevated space. We are dreaming, we're imagining, we're creating. So we're in this high vibration. So when these things, like the stuff that comes up, because we are up here, we can deal with this stuff a little bit more easily. But I feel like if we start here, we're in the problem. And I feel that digging into the problem is just bringing more of that. And so the attention needs to move away from what we consider the problem and go into the imagination, go into the creation, go into the inspiration. Mm. And so when we're in that space, this stuff is going to come up, because that's what I've found. Like, I've been able to uncover a lot because it comes up and it shows up and I go, oh, ooh, ew. Yeah. But because I have my vision, because I'm clear, because I know, okay, right, look, I need some help here because I don't know what I'm doing, like I just don't know what I'm doing. And so the help comes. Mm. So we can be in that space of, yes. So in answer to your question, I think it's getting people in tune with the vision. The vision that they would like to create for themselves.
Yeah. I agree with you that that no matter what you do, the issues are going to come up, and you have a choice whether you want to work on them or push them back down and wait till later. It won't be, you're not going to be able to do that forever, but you will have the opportunity to work on them. So this idea of being in a higher state when you work on the problems, is that why you're taking them into vision?
Yeah. So bringing people back into themselves, because what I've found is that we can go into this creation mode from the external environment, and there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of stimulus, there's a lot of wants, needs, and desires from around everyone. So for me, I believe that it's the first place is to come back into here, to feel this wholeness and this richness, and to feel like we are deserving, to feel like we are worthy, to feel like we are loved and loved by life, And so when you can come to that place, like, I honestly believe that things just start coming to you. I don't see that it has to be this pushing all the time. So, and literally, like, answers. People don't give enough credit to materializing information. Like, everyone wants to materialize a house or a car or whatever. And yeah, I've certainly been in that place too. But when there comes this wholeness, then it's like you're a magnet, and then things that you are in total alignment with come into your space, and then you pick them up. And for me, I feel it's really, really important to start seeing these really subtle things, the teeny tiny things, the stuff that people don't normally notice. You've got to notice that little stuff, because the little stuff leads to the big stuff. So yeah.
I think that's so true. I started my manifesting journey on parking spaces, and my family would laugh at me, but hey, I got good results. Yeah. And I kind of, questioned whether I could manifest larger things in my life. And of course I have had some success with that, but it's not a super big part of my practice. It's not my path exactly, but I love that, that I love that work, and I love to think about it. So, but one thing I was wondering is, if a person does not know who they are, how do they get to the vision? What is the process for that? That's
the process, is because that's not uncommon. That is quite common. Sorry. I think, we live in a world that puts quite a lot of attention on what we don't have. And so that's an evidence procedure again. You know, those sorts of things, when you're coming to wanting to create stuff from this place of I don't have it, that's building your unworthiness. That is totally coming from a place of lack. You're like, I don't have it now. It's still not showing up.
Because
See, I'm not good enough.
You don't deserve it, because if you deserve it, you would have it.
Yes. So for me, the thing that I feel is the most important thing, the first thing is the connect back into your heart, connect back into your soul, connect back. Because what you'll find is when you come from that place of connection, you're going to be writing a completely different story. Like, I've done this process both ways. I've done a clarifying phase and then connected. And then when I've connected, I wrote, and I'm like, wow, you come from a different vibration. And suddenly, and for me, the connection is a meditation. But if you're not into meditation, it's as simple as just closing your eyes, like close your eyes, release everything from the external environment, come back, feel your heart, feel your breath, and just come back into who you are. How do you feel? Who do you want to be? And so, you know, and this isn't a static process. Like the things that you know, when I look at some of my old things, like some things they've come to fruition, some things have sort of changed form, and then some things have dropped off because they no longer felt important to me. So they were sort of lacked a priority, but you can just get so much more in tune with you. And when you're coming from this place here, and then you start asking a question, who am I? Who do I want to be? What sorts of things do I want to create? And what I realized as well is that you can go an extra step here. Like, say, for instance, you want something tangible. I urge you to go and get images, get things that will bring that experience to you. Like, for example, I wanted to attend this event, and at that time the finances wasn't really looking that great, but and I had some steep competition. Like, it was, you know, I would need to make a miracle happen to be able to get into it. But I watched this video and I started crying because I was like, I've been there. I am going to that. So I had this feeling within my body that I was connected to it. And the first round, I didn't get it, but that's okay because I still committed to that process. And then the next one, I did the whole registration and all that sort of stuff. And then right at the end, it said payment failure. And I was like, damn it. And this was, you know, one of those situations that it's like, if you're out, you're out. You don't get a second chance to go back in and do the thing. So anyway, I was like, okay, no probs. I was a bit heartbroken. But a couple of months later, it comes and it says, hey, payment failure, do you want to sort that out? And so I could sort it out and I was going. So I still had my place.
Wow, that's adorable.
So it's kind of like, you know, when you want to have this creation process, is feel a connection to something, because then if you feel the connection, keep it, make it part of you. You then proceed like you have done that or created that or materialized it or whatever. You know, you are that person. You've got a connection to it. So it's a future thing, but you've brought it into your now. So you carry out your life like that. And so it's only a matter of time before these things will show up for you. Mm. That's the magic.
Yeah, that is magic. So at what point in your life did, or maybe has there been a point in your life where where you knew that your life was actually a spiritual path? Like, how did that come together for you?
It's an interesting question. Well, I think I was always connected to something when I was younger, but I don't believe that that was a conscious thing. But it was a conscious thing, but I don't know that I put it down to it being a spiritual thing. And I was never really into this religion thing. I went to a Catholic high school, which was lovely. But I actually went through a bit of a phase of atheism because I was like, just couldn't connect with it. So I was like, yeah, I just sort of rejected it all.
Yeah, here in the US, we just call that college.
Yeah, okay. So it's a typical thing, that rebellious nature, isn't it?
To explore.
Yeah, so I think I started meeting some people who would then start speaking about, their connection with spirit or their connection to this thing. But see, this again, my evidence procedure showed up for that too, because of course I didn't speak with the spirits and I didn't, have this profound sight or hearing or whatever knowledge. So that was my evidence procedure. So that again, it was like, I'm not good enough even for God type thing. So I'd say that was my early 20s that started coming into my life. But I also know that grace was probably present there, showing me, introducing me to people who I rejected their ideals because they were so strong about theirs, and I was rejecting of them because I was like, no, that's not right, and I had this right and wrong, like, that's not right, that's what's happened all in the world, how can I be associated with that? And just total rejection of people and their ideals. So it's only afterwards that I kind of go, oh, like you could have just been a little bit more gentle about it,
Don't you kind of feel like part of figuring out who you are is figuring out who you're not and what doesn't feel right to you? I mean, I feel like a lot of times we can go into the process and there's this, this feeling of being lost, like you don't know who you are, you don't know what you want to do, you don't know where you're going, and that actually is the process that has to happen in order for you to step onto the path of figuring out who you are and where you're going. So it's like it's a lovely and difficult, horrible time.
Yeah, and I wouldn't have it any other way. It's, as you say, these are the things, all those crunchy moments are the things that develop you as a human being. And when you can look at them in reflection, you can see how they have shaped you and how you can have a little bit more compassion or a little bit more softness around certain things.
So do you think that you came in with that lens of not being good enough? And if so, you're a parent now, and your son is quite young, I know that. And I'm wondering if you see anything emerging in him and how that affects your parenting.
I think that's a very good question. I think you come in with your lessons for sure. But then I was saying this to my mum because I've got very, very capable parents. Like, they're both very strong, very capable people. And my mum would, like, if she does it now, like after a party or something like that, she's always in the kitchen doing the dishes. And I said, well, don't do them. I'll do them. But she's in there, she does it. So there's this kind of, and just through the work that I've done and also witnessing for my own son, is that as a child, if that's continuously happening, it's kind of a rejection of their service. So I think it's The Positive Parenting by Adler, that kids will develop their self-worth through service. So the more that you can allow them to serve within the home, and they can feel satisfied that they have contributed towards the service of the home, like the cleaning, the cooking, whatever's within their capabilities. Like, you're not going to get a 1-year-old to do all that sort of stuff. But, my son will get involved with the vacuum cleaning, and, there's a part of me that wants to go, you're not doing it right. You haven't got that gap. But then it's like, no, you have to nurture that. You have to allow him to do that, because otherwise there's going to be that feeling within him, I'm not good enough. I can't do that. Now, I'm not saying anything badly about my parents, because everyone's doing the best they can. And they certainly did not think like, oh, that's going to produce that kind of feeling within them. So there's no blame there. It's just coming from a place of observation, and then not wanting to create that same situation within my family. Now, my son, on the other hand, is a very strong kind of, I think he does know his identity. I'm pretty sure he's like, yeah, no, that's okay. He's quite a confident little fellow, and I'd like to continue to nurture that and not hinder that.
Yeah, that's so hard. I probably know 100,000 mothers who, made their living helping their kids, and possibly over helping. As I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, damn, there's another thing, another opportunity. Oh, God.
But that's the thing, like, I think also we're in a different world now. We're not, even my grandmother, she's very tolerant of me, but I know that certain things she's like, you just don't do that, because that's just not the way that it was done back then. She's 98, she's got all her marbles. She's a strong-willed, capable woman as well, sort of runs in the family. But, so things were done differently. And same with my parents, things were done differently. There was a different acceptance. And this is, again, now we're starting to see that these kids have I think they're like little geniuses. I think they're just totally connected. I think it was you who was saying we don't need to educate them. They can, what children are able to do on their own. Like, he learned to walk, he learned to crawl, walk, run, talk. I mean, I don't say, hey, yeah, that was me teaching him. That little guy, he did that all himself, So what else are they capable of if we were just to allow them to evolve into their own being? And I just think that is just where we are at this point in our evolution. Yeah. So I don't think you need to be going, oh, look, that was another thing, because you facilitated the growth of your human beings into who they are today.
Yeah. I think once you understand the evolutionary process from that perspective, that we are in this together, and we're building something together. And, each generation has brought something really important to the table that you can, especially from the personal perspective, you can then have a frame of reference for understanding your parents. And I have spent a lot of time struggling and over the role that my parents played in my life, and the people that they were. And it wasn't until, pretty far down the road that I was able to understand just what you're saying, that they, even though we hear the phrase, they did the best they could, sometimes that doesn't heal a broken heart when you have a broken heart. So it would be nice if one day we children intrinsically understood that, so they didn't have to look at their parents and say, like, you're such a dope. You don't know anything. You know? I always say, like, yes, that's true, but I did serve a purpose.
Yes, yes. Yeah, a number of purposes, yes.
Yeah. So what's up next for you? Where is your life heading? And well, you know what I wanted to ask you is, have you found that these issues that come up to be dealt with, whatever they are, the wounds or the frame of reference or whatever they might be, do you find that once you learned how that process worked, that it was much easier to deal with them? And how was it different?
Yeah, look, I think for me, what would show up now is that it becomes a speedy process. So, what might have taken, like, what started out as years, then it's months, then it's, days. Now it's like it's moments. It's like you can recognize stuff, because I'm not going to say that stuff doesn't come up for me. It sure as anything sure does. But what is good about it is that I can now recognize it, and then I can go, okay, right. So if I need help with it, I will ask for help. If I think that this is something that I just need to create a different story around it, then I will do that. But I'd say that what happens is that you will overcome it quicker. So the speed will be shorter, which just means that it's losing its hold. It's losing. Once it would be fixed in there.
Sticky.
And you'd be dogged and you'd defend it and you'd be like, yeah, no, that's definitely right. And now it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Hi there. Right. I can see you. Right. Okay. What are we going to do about this? How are we going to manage this? What's our next step here?
Yeah. I think it's both that we're becoming more skilled at it, and the frequency is supporting the stuff to come up faster and to clear faster. I know I am, like, every single day understanding more about myself, and sometimes the things that break my heart or bring up some shame, or some of these other things that we think about ourselves, I can barely cry half a tear before it's gone. It's like I literally get choked up and then it's out, it's gone.
It's gone.
I'm amazed by that. I think
Yay!
Yeah. And it's so then you can I feel like that's one of the rewards of being true and diligent on your path now. It's that is the reward, is that you step more into a flow state where these things sticking to you. I love the way that you describe that. Like you're just not like a Velcro thing, like you can go with
it just comes. It's like things just come to you, and it's not like it's not like I'm going, hey, this is what I want. This is the funny thing, is that you go and you make an intention, or you set like something that's meaningful for you, and then things are going to come and you go, oh, that is what I wanted. Like that's exactly what I wanted. And yet it's not something that I explicitly wrote about, but there was something else you said, and anyway.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what you're doing now and where your path has taken you.
Well, my path has taken me into, I started writing a book last year. It's, I'd love that to be published this year. And so for me, it's about building the coursework and framework around the concepts that are in the book. And it's really about inner wealth. The whole thing that the inspiration came from was when COVID hit and the world literally shut down. And I was like, well, that's great, isn't it? Because at the moment, there's not really much you can spend money on. So there's no travel, there's no going out with friends. There's I'm sure people can find many ways to spend money. But for me, I was like, well, that's not really the currency anymore, is it? Like money is not the currency right here. The fact that you can feel calm and whole and safe and secure within yourself, that is the currency. And so this sort of concept sort of delved deeper and deeper. And now it's like, actually, when we can come to this place of wholeness, we are creating this world around us, or co-creating it. But you know, in contrast to what the materializers and the laws of attraction are talking about, is, you know, you want to create something from this external world. And, you know, a lot of the time it comes because somebody else has something and you think you want it, you know? And so it's like, you're coming from a place of, I don't have it. But if you can come back, spend the time, connect in with yourself, go through that clarity exercise, you can then create the wealth, the inner wealth. And then when that is then transcended out into your world, then the external wealth, in whatever way that fits for people, financial wealth, you know, wealth in its entirety. But I believe that the first way is coming from this place within. Come here and then out. Yeah. And that's where the magic happens.
Yeah, I love that you are talking about different ways to view wealth, and to that it isn't just financial. There's much more to it than that. And I'm so excited for this book to come out. So I'm when you first told me about it, I was like head to toe goosebumps. I was like, this is a good book. This is a book that I could read, you know.
Oh, thank you.
One of the things that you've been talking about on your social media is that we each have within us everything that we need to lead, and that it's not about knowledge. It's not about continuously gaining more knowledge, which is so resonant for me. I discovered probably, I don't know, 10 years ago that I was teaching yoga at the time, and there was this, oh my gosh, it was like this drive in yoga teachers to like get more accreditations, mm-hmm. more trainings, get more like numbers and letters behind your name and stuff. And I was like, it just didn't resonate for me. And at one point I just stopped taking any workshops. I just could not take another workshop. And I don't think I ever have. I mean, I've done stuff, but not a yoga workshop. But so can you talk a little bit more about that from your perspective? I love it.
Well, this is a new insight for me. So, and a massive aha. But, you know, what I'd like to just share at this point, and it is for everyone, is that you can be tracking down this particular area and not be seeing results because you're not in an alignment. But when you can get into alignment, the results aren't linear, is what I'm saying. But this was a new realization from last week, was that we, just like what you were saying, is that we think that we need to know all of these technical skills. So the leadership, what I found in my experience is that some people become leaders because they are good at something. So they might be very technically aware, and so they become a leader, but they're not necessarily leaders. Like, they don't necessarily have that leadership quality, which is nurturing, empowering. They're kind of like, I'm in my silo here because I'm really, really smart and I know my stuff and I know how to check and balance everything. But that's not leadership. Leadership is so much broader than that. And I've had the benefit of being able to see how both of them work, because I remember having a leader in my life who went above and beyond And he didn't need to, he did not need to. He gave me a shot. He was like, right, you're here, right, we're going to make the best of this. And then he, I didn't know this at the time, but then he was, giving me more and more responsibility as I had obviously jumped over a hurdle for him. He was like, okay, you've done that. And so he went and he, spoke for me. And so that had an incredible effect on my own self-worth, because I was like, here's somebody who believes in me, and I felt like I was good at what I was doing. But I also had a situation where I'd gone into something. Now, you see, this is the thing. Like, if I'd have known at that point that leadership was not about the technicalities, but I was comparing myself to other people who were so much more technical than me. But when I look back on what I was able to achieve, I'm like that was the only thing that was standing in the way of actually being a really cool leader, was just owning it. Like going, yeah, you're in this situation. This is what you're here to do. These are your responsibilities. You've achieved them. Stand in that. But does anyone actually talk about this? Do we necessarily get taught that is what leadership is about? Is about empowering people. It's actually not standing there and being hey, I'm standing here, I'm the greatest, you listen to what I have to say. It's not about that.
Yeah.
In fact, really cool leaders will surround themselves in people who are way smarter than them, so that they can do what they do, which is just make sure, yes, yep, that's right, cool.
Yeah. I love that. To me, leadership is about helping. If a leader is not helping other people become empowered and step into their authenticity and their capability, then it's not really, it doesn't feel like leadership to me. I don't know what it is, but all right. So, wow. Okay. We've covered a lot of territory, and I'm wondering if we could switch over to our lightning round now.
Okay. Putting me on
not a quiz, so you don't have to worry.
Okay, so this is just like a one word answer type thing.
No.
Oh.
You can say as much as you want about the subject.
Okay.
I'm not even sure lightning round is the right name for it, but that's what we're using.
Okay, cool.
Okay, number 1. What human traits do you love the most?
Love, compassion, grace.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, one of mine, which
is,
of course those things are great, but one of my favorite kind of people to be around are people who have really awesome self-deprecating humor.
People who make me laugh. I love that. I love it.
Those are my favorite people, who can, throw some jokes around about themselves.
Yeah.
Don't take themselves too seriously.
Yeah. It's important. Humor is like when you can laugh at yourself. I think that's a very healing kind of thing.
It's like you're healed. It's evidence that you're healed.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the time, some people do it to deflect, but most of the time it's because
it's like eek.
Yeah. Okay. How has your definition of family evolved from childhood to adulthood?
Wow. I think it probably, I think that family is probably one of my highest values. It's my family, as I said, we traveled together, for a long time. It was just the 4 of us. So, we could rely on each other. We depended on each other. We were there for each other through thick and through thin. I really always felt very loved and nurtured within my family. I feel very blessed. And I guess now as a mother myself, it's like wanting to make sure that my son, out of everything, always feels safe and loved in our house too. So I'm not sure it's really changed, other than maybe it's sort of changed form and has kind of evolved into now me not being the nurtured one, but now me being the nurturing one.
Yeah. I feel that for myself, I had a family that wasn't connected at all. There was it was dysfunctional and difficult. And trying to create something in my own family that I had no experience with
Yeah.
was super challenging. And at times I wanted it so badly that if it wasn't happening the way I thought it should, I would just like freak out. Like if, you know, the kids weren't being nice to each other or supportive of each other, you know, I would just like lose it.
Yeah.
Because it was like a wound. It was an unhealed wound that I hadn't
Yeah.
really, you know, kind of dived into. So, oh, it's challenging. It's very challenging. Okay, number 3. What was your first airplane flight like?
Gosh, it would have been when I was about 6, and I think we flew to New Zealand from South Africa. So that's a long flight, but it was back in the days when they weren't so fixed on this safety thing. And, you know, my parents used to sort of make us a bed on the floor or somewhere. And so I would just sleep, you know. I think I do remember that takeoff. Man, I love that. I love that feeling. And I still love that feeling. I still love turbulence, like just weird. I love it. Like people are going wild and crazy. And I'm like, yeah, this is so good. I love it. Just love that. I don't know. Just, I really loved that. It was always a good experience.
Wow. That reminds me of a trip that we took with our family to Vancouver, and we were flying back, and I manifested terrible turbulence. And my son and I were sitting in the last row of the plane, and I was like freaking out. And he was probably, I don't know, he was 9 or 7, 8, 7, something, I don't know, something like that. And I like looked at him, and he looked at me, and he was like, and it was like literally for 4 hours, the flight attendants had to be in their seats. It was really, really bad. And he was like, he looked at me and he was like, "What are you gonna do?" And I was like, "What are you, a little Buddha?"
Yeah. See?
Of course.
What are you going to do? That's so profound, isn't it? What are you going to do?
With that look on his face, like,
yeah,
it sucks, but what are you gonna do?
Love it.
Okay, what makes your house feel like a home?
I love beautiful fragrances. I love beautiful things. I do have the gift of beautification. I just love being surrounded in beauty. I love the sun. I love the sun coming in when it's gentle, not like this thing that you would be seeing through there. And I love flowers. So fresh flowers. I just redid my kitchen, and I love it because, you know, not only was I able to take part in the whole design process, I was able to do the work with my father. So we did the work together, and it was just one of those creations of, you know, where I put the creation out, and it came literally in a way that I least expected. And I was just like, wow, you know, how this magnificence. And when I look at it, I just think, wow. And when you look at the picture, I did a pretty good job.
Wow.
better than the picture. Oh. So I think it's things, it's fresh, it's white, it's clean, it's simple. I don't like having lots of stuff. I just want to have space where I can let my eyes rest, you know?
Mm,
So simplicity. I like simplicity too.
I love space. Okay, last question. What is your idea of heaven? Maybe you
Of
just
heaven. Well, this is an interesting thing. Okay. Aren't you glad you asked this question?
I think so.
Because, see, people, and this is something that I don't particularly like about religion, is they talk about heaven like it's like we look forward to going there, and because we don't like being here, but in heaven it's so much better. And I'm like, well, you know, that's not really my way, because what I believe is that we can actually bring heaven to earth. So when we are in this creation phase, we are kind of like this living, breathing, heavenly creature that gets to actually just put yourself in here and think, wow, like this is heaven. This is the way, you know, that it's not separate from me. It is me. This is one united being of I don't know, of grace or whatever. Like if I think for me, the mission, one of the missions in my life has just to become a fully integrated being, so that I can feel like I am not separate from God, but I am actually part of God. God works within me, and then if I can trust that integration, then life is working for me, so that even when things don't go according to plan, there is a reason for it. So how is it in my favor? And so, yeah, that's my definition of heaven, is just being,
That's
being in it.
wonderful. I love it. Did you bring a question for me today?
Yes, I would like to know what's your inspiration? What drives you to do what you do, to be who you are,
That
to
is
put yourself in the world?
because I have tried to quit so many times. I think like, I don't have to be doing this. I could just be retired or something, retired from, I don't know what, but yeah, oh, wow. Um, I'm inspired by, right now I would say I'm inspired by becoming my authentic self, and knowing that that is possibly a process that will never end. And sharing that with other people. And I wrote in my book that I feel like my job here is to become myself and to let you become yourself. And that sounds so easy, but it's so hard. It's so hard. It's hard to become yourself, and it's hard to really fully accept someone else, because we have all these ideas about what they should be. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how that plays out on earth as more and more people step into their authenticity. And I think it's going to get a lot easier to be in communion with people, to be in community with people, because once you feel that in someone, there's this beautiful acceptance that it's good, it's wonderful, you know, who they are as they are. But getting there has been such a long journey for myself. Oh my gosh, so long. And still, of course, every day I'm discovering new things that need to fall off. And if I let that get to me, then, you know, and it has, of course, it's like, oh, you know, but this idea that it's a never-ending process, that not only are we going to become more ourselves, but as we're moving toward that, we become more and more and more and more. So there's always more to discover, and it becomes more a path of discovery than a path of healing at some point.
Yeah, I love that. That
To that.
Well, I think it's about being on that discovery. So it is the discovery, because I believe that the healing comes as a process. It's not a separate kind of, I don't, we don't have to fully heal, because we probably know that that's not possible, or that might not be our place in this lifetime. But I think if we can go on the discovery, then we're in the discovery, and the healing will take place as it does.
Yeah.
As it does.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being my guest today. It has been wonderful. And I've really enjoyed following you on Facebook, and I encourage everybody to look you up and keep track of this book that you're writing, because I think it's going to be a good one. Maybe we'll get back together when both of our books are out, and talk about them.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. Thank you very much for having me. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, Kirsten.